The doorbell rings at exactly 7:15 on a Tuesday evening, and I freeze with my coffee cup halfway to my lips. Nobody visits me at this hour. Nobody visits me at any hour, really, except for my daughter Sarah when she's feeling guilty about not calling enough, or the occasional delivery driver who's gotten lost looking for the Hendersons next door. But this ring feels different somehow, insistent, familiar. I set down my cup with trembling fingers, the porcelain clinking against the saucer in a way that sounds too loud in my quiet kitchen. The evening light filters through my lace curtains, casting long shadows across the linoleum floor that I've walked across thousands of times in the 32 years I've lived in this house. 32 years of routine, of safety, of deliberate forgetting. The bell rings again, and this time I hear something else. Footsteps shifting on my front porch, the creak of the old wooden boards that I've been meaning to have repaired, but never quite get around to. My heart starts beating faster, that irregular rhythm that my doctor says is nothing to worry about, but feels like everything to worry about when you're 68 and living alone. I smooth my cardigan, the blue one with the pearl buttons that Sarah bought me last Christmas, and walk toward the front door, my slippers whispering against the hardwood floors of the hallway. The mirror by the entrance catches my reflection as I pass, and I see what any visitor would see. A woman with silver hair pulled back in a loose bun, reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck, laugh lines around eyes that have seen too much and forgotten what they needed to forget. My hand hesitates on the doorknob. Through the frosted glass panel, I can make out a figure, tall, broad-shouldered, holding what looks like flowers. My mind races through possibilities. A delivery? But what florist delivers at 7:15 on a Tuesday? A neighbor with some emergency? But the Hendersons are in Florida, and the Millers wouldn't bring flowers. I turn the deadbolt with fingers that feel clumsy and old, then slowly open the door. The world tilts. Standing on my porch, holding a bouquet of white roses, my favorite, though I haven't told anyone that in decades, is a man I thought I'd never see again. A man whose face has aged, whose hair has gone completely gray, whose shoulders carry the weight of 43 years, but whose eyes are still the same impossible blue that once made me believe in forever. "Hello, Margaret," he says, and his voice is rougher now, weathered by time and cigarettes and conversations I wasn't part of. "I hope you don't mind me stopping by." James Morrison, the man I was going to marry, the man I left at the altar on June 15th, 1981, the man whose heart I broke so thoroughly that he moved to Portland the next week, and, according to the occasional whispered gossip I couldn't avoid in a town this small, never came back. Until now. My mouth opens, but no sound comes out. I grip the doorframe, grateful for its solid reality, because everything else feels like I'm floating, like the ground beneath my feet has turned to water. He's here, after 4 decades of silence, of carefully constructed distance, of pretending that the most important decision I ever made was also the right one. He's here. "I know this is unexpected," he continues, and there's a nervousness in his voice that makes him sound younger, more like the man I knew when we were both 25 and thought we had all the time in the world. "I probably should have called first, but I wasn't sure you'd want to hear from me." The roses tremble slightly in his hands, and I realize he's as nervous as I am. This man who once knew every freckle on my shoulders, who could make me laugh until I couldn't breathe, who planned a honeymoon in Ireland because I'd once mentioned wanting to see the cliffs of Moher, this man is standing on my porch like a stranger asking for directions. "James," I finally manage, And hearing his name in my own voice after all these years feels like opening a door I locked so long ago I've forgotten where I put the key. I... How did you? I'm back in town for my mother's funeral, he says quickly, as if he needs to get the words out before he loses courage. She passed last week, and I thought maybe it was time we talked. His mother, Mrs. Morrison, who taught second grade for 40 years and made the best apple pie in 3 counties, who held my hands at her kitchen table the morning after I called off the wedding and told me she understood, even though I could see the disappointment in her eyes, who sent me Christmas cards for 5 years afterward until I moved to this house and never gave her my new address. I'm so sorry, I say, and I mean it. She was a wonderful woman. She was, he agrees. She never stopped asking about you, you know. Even at the end, when she couldn't remember my name half the time, she'd ask if I'd seen Margaret lately, if you were happy. The words hit me like a physical blow. I lean harder against the doorframe, feeling suddenly dizzy. Happy? Have I been happy? I've been safe, I've been comfortable, I've been fine, but happy? James, I start, then stop. What can I possibly say? How do you summarize 43 years of living to the person you chose not to live them with? He takes a small step closer, and I can smell his cologne. Different now. Something woodsy and expensive, not the drugstore aftershave he wore when we were young. But underneath it, he still smells like James, like summer mornings and possibility, and the future I turned away from. I don't expect anything, Margaret, he says softly. I'm not here to cause trouble or upset your life. I know you're probably married, have grandchildren, a whole life I'm not part of. I couldn't leave town again without seeing you, without telling you that I understand now why you did what you did. Married. The word hangs between us like a question mark. I look down at my left hand, at the bare ring finger I've kept bare for 68 years. No wedding ring, no engagement ring, no symbol of a love that lasted. There was David, who I dated for 3 years in my 30s. There was Robert, who proposed when I was 45 and seemed genuinely shocked when I said no. There were others, good men who deserved better than someone who was always comparing them to a ghost. But I never married, never even came close. James, I say again, and this time his name feels less foreign on my tongue. Would you like to come in? He looks surprised, as if he'd prepared himself for rejection, but not for invitation. The roses in his hands seem to straighten, as if they too are surprised by this turn of events. Are you sure? He asks. I don't want to impose. Impose, as if love could ever be an imposition, as if the memory of love, carried for 43 years like a secret treasure, could ever be unwelcome? I step back and open the door wider. I was just making coffee, I lie, because the coffee I was drinking has gone cold by now, forgotten in the chaos of unexpected arrivals and impossible visitors. The least I can do is offer you a cup. He follows me inside, and suddenly my house feels different, smaller somehow, as if his presence has rearranged the furniture, changed the angles of the rooms. I lead him to the kitchen, acutely aware of every detail he might notice: the stack of library books on the counter, the pill organizer by the sink, the single place setting I'd laid out for dinner. Evidence of a life lived alone. This is lovely, he says, looking around the kitchen with genuine interest. Very you. Very me. I wonder what he sees when he says that. The herbs growing in small pots on the windowsill, the watercolor painting of a lighthouse that I bought at a craft fair because it reminded me of Maine, where we once planned to spend our anniversaries. The kitchen table set for one with a cloth placemat and a cloth napkin because I refuse to eat like I'm camping in my own home. Thank you, I say, accepting the flowers and breathing in their sweet fragrance. You clean up pretty well yourself. And he does. Gone is yesterday's travel-worn appearance, replaced by a crisp white shirt, navy slacks, and a sport coat that brings out the blue in his eyes. He's even trimmed his hair, and I catch the scent of that expensive cologne again as he steps inside. Something smells incredible, he says, following me toward the kitchen. I may have gone a little overboard, I admit, arranging the yellow roses in another of my grandmother's vases. It's been a while since I've had reason to cook a real meal. Margaret. He stops walking and waits until I turn to look at him. You didn't need to go to all this trouble for me. I wanted to, I say simply, and realize it's true. For the first time in decades, I wanted to create something beautiful for someone else. Besides, what's the point of having good china if you never use it? He laughs, that warm sound that's becoming familiar again. In that case, I'm honored to be worthy of the good china. I pour us each a glass of the wine, a bottle of Pinot Noir that the vendor at the market assured me would pair perfectly with beef, and we settle into an easy rhythm of conversation while I finish preparing dinner. He offers to help, but I wave him away, content to have him sit at the kitchen counter where I can see him while I work. Tell me about your house in Portland, I say as I sear the steaks in my cast iron skillet. You mentioned you can hear the ocean. It's small, he says, but it has a deck that faces west, so I can watch the sunset every night. There's a path down to the beach that takes about 5 minutes to walk. On clear days, I can see all the way to the horizon. It sounds perfect for you. It is, mostly, though it's designed for one person. All my furniture is arranged so I can see the water from wherever I'm sitting. Very peaceful, but also very... He pauses, searching for the word. Lonely? I suggest gently. Solitary, he says. I told myself there was a difference, but I'm not sure there really is. I understand completely. My house is arranged the same way. Everything positioned for the comfort and convenience of one person. All the furniture angled toward the television or the window. All the routines designed around a single set of needs and preferences. Have you been happy there? I ask, transferring the steaks to rest while I finish the cream sauce. Content, he says after a moment, which I thought was the same thing as happy until yesterday. And now? Now I'm remembering what happy actually feels like. The words hang between us like a confession, and I feel heat rise in my cheeks that has nothing to do with the stove. I focus on stirring the sauce, adding cream and herbs, and trying to ignore the way my pulse quickens whenever he looks at me like that. Dinner is ready, I announce, perhaps more brightly than necessary. We move to the dining room, where my grandmother's china gleams in the candlelight, and the yellow roses provide a cheerful centerpiece. I've even put on music, jazz standards from the 50s and 60s, songs we used to dance to when we were young, and believed that love could conquer anything. This is extraordinary, Margaret, James says after his first bite. I feel like I'm in a 5-star restaurant. You're very kind, but I think you're just used to bachelor cooking. I'm serious. This is restaurant quality. Have you ever thought about doing this professionally? The question surprises me. Cooking? Oh no, I enjoy it, but only for special occasions. Maybe you should have more special occasions. The suggestion lingers as we eat, and I find myself wondering what my life might look like with more reasons to cook elaborate meals, more opportunities to use the good china, more evenings filled with conversation and laughter instead of the quiet companionship of television and books. James, I say as we're finishing the main course, can I ask you something? Anything. Why didn't you ever remarry? After Linda, I mean. You're a good man. You're attractive. You must have had opportunities. He sets down his fork and considers the question seriously. I tried, he says finally. There was someone a few years after the divorce, Carol. She was lovely, a widow with grown children, very kind, very understanding about my past. We dated for 2 years. What happened? I couldn't stop comparing her to you. He meets my eyes across the table. It wasn't fair to her. She deserved someone who could love her for who she was, not someone who was always measuring her against a memory. James, I know it sounds pathetic, carrying a torch for 40 years, but the truth is, Margaret, I never stopped loving you. I learned to live without you, but I never stopped believing that what we had was real, that it mattered, that maybe someday. He doesn't finish the sentence, but he doesn't need to. I can see the hope in his eyes, tentative but unmistakable. I never stopped loving you either, I admit quietly. I told myself I had. I convinced myself that what I felt was just nostalgia or guilt or the natural tendency to romanticize what might have been. But seeing you again, having you here, I know it's more than that. What are you saying? I take a sip of wine, gathering courage. I'm saying that maybe we're not too old for second chances. Maybe we're exactly the right age for them. The silence that follows feels charged with possibility. Outside, I can hear the evening sounds of my neighborhood, dogs barking, cars pulling into driveways, families settling into their routines. But inside my dining room, with candlelight flickering across James' face and 43 years of separation suddenly feeling like nothing more than a long intermission, the rest of the world seems very far away. Margaret, he says softly, what would that look like? A second chance for us? It's the question I've been asking myself since the moment I saw him on my porch, and I still don't have a complete answer. I don't know, I say honestly. We live in different states, we have different lives, different routines. I don't know if people our age are supposed to uproot everything for love. Says who? I don't know. Society? Common sense? Fear? Maybe we're past worrying about what we're supposed to do, he suggests. Maybe at our age, we get to make our own rules. Make our own rules. What a radical concept for a woman who spent her entire adult life following the established patterns of respectability and caution. What kind of rules would those be? I ask. The kind that say it's never too late to choose love over loneliness. The kind that say life is too short to waste time on anything that doesn't make you happy. The kind that say if two people find each other again after 43 years apart, maybe they should pay attention to that miracle instead of looking for reasons to walk away from it. You make it sound simple. Maybe it is simple. Maybe we're the ones making it complicated. I look at this man sitting across from me, this person who knew me when I was young and foolish and afraid, who's seeing me now when I'm older and hopefully wiser, but still, apparently, afraid. What are you afraid of, Margaret? He asks gently, as if he can read my thoughts. Everything, I say with a laugh that sounds more like a sob. I'm afraid of being hurt again. I'm afraid of hurting you again. I'm afraid that we're trying to recapture something that only existed because we were different people then. I'm afraid that we'll disappoint each other, or that this feeling will fade, or that I'll wake up tomorrow and realize this was all some kind of senior citizen delusion. Those are all reasonable fears, he says. I have most of them too, but I also have another fear that's stronger than all of those. What's that? I'm afraid that if I get on that plane Sunday without telling you how I really feel, without asking you to consider taking a chance on us, I'll spend whatever years I have left regretting my cowardice for the second time. The words hit me like a physical force. I set down my wine glass with trembling fingers and stare at him across the table. What exactly are you asking me, James? I'm asking if you'd be willing to find out what happens next. I'm asking if maybe we could spend some time together, real time, not just these few stolen days, and see if what we're feeling is real or just nostalgia dressed up in fancy clothes. How would that work? I don't know. Maybe I could visit more often. Maybe you could come to Portland for a while. Maybe we could meet somewhere in the middle and figure it out as we go. He reaches across the table and takes my hand. I know it's complicated, Margaret. I know it's scary, But I also know that sitting here with you feels more right than anything has felt in 43 years. I look down at our joined hands, his weathered and marked with age, mine soft from decades of hand cream and careful attention. Two hands that once planned a future together, that signed a marriage license that was never used, that have spent 4 decades reaching for other people and never quite finding what they were looking for. James, I say slowly, if we do this, if we try this, I need you to understand something. What? I'm not the same person I was at 25. I have opinions now, strong ones. I've been living alone for most of my adult life, and I've gotten set in my ways. I like my routines. I like my independence. I'm not sure I remember how to compromise, how to consider someone else's needs and preferences along with my own. Good, he says, surprising me. I don't want the 25-year-old Margaret. I want the woman sitting across from me right now, the one who makes incredible dinners and grows herbs in her kitchen window and creates beautiful paintings and has the courage to let a ghost from her past back into her life. I want the woman who's strong enough to live alone and brave enough to consider not doing it anymore. And I want the man who spent 42 years helping other people plan for the unexpected, I say, realizing as I speak that it's true. The man who kept a ring for 4 decades because his heart wouldn't let him throw it away. The man who came back to find me, even though he had every reason to stay away. So what do you say? He asks. Are you willing to see what happens when 2 people who've been practicing independence decide to try interdependence instead? I think about my quiet house, my solitary meals, my carefully constructed life that leaves room for no one else's chaos or complications or joy. I think about my watercolor paints sitting unused in my spare bedroom because I gave up the class when it started feeling too social, too much like admitting I wanted company. I think about the extra coffee I made this morning out of habit, even though I was the only one who would drink it. And then I think about last night, about the way my kitchen felt alive with conversation and possibility, about the way this morning felt full of anticipation instead of just another day to get through, about the way I'm sitting here now, wearing my best dress and my grandmother's china, feeling beautiful and nervous and hopeful all at once. Yes, I say, and the word comes out stronger than I expected. Yes, James, I want to see what happens next. His smile is radiant. Really? Really, but I have conditions. Name them. We take it slow. We don't make any major decisions or life changes until we're sure this is what we both want, and we promise to be honest with each other, even when it's difficult. Especially when it's difficult. Agreed, he says immediately. Anything else? Just one more thing. I pause, trying to find the words for what I need him to understand. I need you to know that I'm scared, terrified actually. The last time I trusted my heart completely, I ended up hurting the person I loved most. I don't want to do that again. Margaret, he lifts our joined hands and kisses my knuckles again. That gesture that sends warmth shooting up my arm and straight to my chest. The last time you trusted your heart completely, you made the right choice for both of us, even though it hurt. Your heart knew things your head hadn't figured out yet. Maybe this time we should trust it to know what it's doing. Maybe we should. Maybe at 68 and 70, we're finally old enough to believe that the heart might actually be wiser than fear. So what happens now? I ask. Now we finish this incredible dinner, and then maybe we sit on your couch and talk until it's too late for me to drive back to the hotel without falling asleep at the wheel. James Morrison, I say with mock seriousness, are you angling for an invitation to spend the night? He blushes like a teenager, and I realize with delight that he's as nervous about the physical aspects of this reunion as I am. I meant the guest room, he says quickly. If you have one, I wasn't presuming. I know what you meant, I say gently. And yes, I have a guest room. And yes, you're welcome to stay if you'd like to. The relief on his face makes me laugh. We really are out of practice at this, aren't we? I observe. Completely. But maybe that's not entirely a bad thing. Maybe it means we'll appreciate whatever we find more than we would have when we were young and took everything for granted. Maybe it does. We finish dinner slowly, savoring both the food and the conversation that flows between us like a river that's found its proper channel after years of meandering. We talk about books we've read, places we've traveled, dreams we've abandoned, and others we've discovered. We talk about our fears of aging, our pride in the lives we've built independently, our wonder at finding ourselves here together despite all the years and distance that separated us. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up, James says as we clear the table together, moving around my kitchen like we've been doing this for years instead of days. Me too, I admit. It feels too good to be real. But it is real, he says, stopping in the middle of loading the dishwasher to look at me. This is really happening, Margaret. We're really here. We're really here, I repeat, testing the words. They feel solid, true, like something I can build a new future on. After the dishes are done, we settle on the living room couch with coffee and the remainder of the wine. I show him my photo albums, decades of birthdays and holidays, and ordinary moments that make up a life. He shows me pictures on his phone, his house in Portland, the beach path he walks every morning, the small garden where he grows vegetables with more enthusiasm than skill. I'd like to see it in person, I say, studying a photo of his deck with its view of the Pacific. Your house, I mean, your life there. I'd like that too, and I'd like to spend more time here, get to know your life, your routine, your friends. I don't have many friends, I admit. I've gotten rather solitary over the years. That's okay. I'm not exactly a social butterfly myself, but maybe together we could venture out a little more. Go to those community center dances you mentioned. Take that art class you stopped attending. You do that? Take an art class with a bunch of senior citizens? Margaret, I'd take underwater basket weaving if it meant spending time with you. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my wine. I don't think they offer underwater basket weaving at the community center, but I'll ask. Please don't. I was exaggerating for effect. Too late. I'm already planning to sign us both up. We're both laughing now, the kind of deep, helpless laughter that feels like medicine for years of taking life too seriously. When it finally subsides, we're sitting closer together on the couch, and I'm acutely aware of his warmth beside me, the way his presence changes the molecular structure of my living room. Margaret, he says softly. Yes? Would it be presumptuous of me to ask if I could kiss you? My heart stops, then starts beating double time. It would be presumptuous, I say, and I'd like it very much. He turns toward me on the couch, his hand coming up to cup my cheek with a tenderness that makes my eyes fill with tears. His thumb brushes across my skin, and I realize that no one has touched me with this kind of gentle reverence in more years than I care to count. Are you sure? He whispers. Instead of answering, I lean forward and close the distance between us. His lips are soft and warm and familiar, even after all these years. The kiss is gentle at first, tentative, both of us relearning the geography of intimacy. But then something shifts, and suddenly we're 25 again, passion overriding caution, need overriding fear. When we finally break apart, we're both breathing hard. Oh my, I whisper. Indeed, he agrees, his forehead resting against mine. We sit there for a moment, foreheads touching, sharing breath and amazement, and the sweet terror of realizing that some things, the important things, haven't changed at all. I should probably show you to the guest room, I say eventually, though I make no move to get up. Probably, he agrees, also not moving. It's getting late, very late. You need your sleep. I do. Neither of us moves. Margaret? Yes? I'm happy, he says simply. For the first time in 43 years, I'm genuinely, completely happy. Me too, I whisper. Me too. I wake up alone in my own bed at 7 o'clock in the morning, and for a moment I panic, thinking I dreamed it all. But then I smell coffee brewing downstairs and hear the faint sound of someone moving around in my kitchen, and I know that James is real. This is real. Everything that's happened in the past 2 days is actually my life now. I put on my robe and slippers and pad downstairs to find him standing at my kitchen counter, fully dressed, holding a cup of coffee and looking out the window at my small backyard garden. "Good morning," I say, suddenly shy in my own house. "Good morning, beautiful," he says, turning to smile at me. "I hope you don't mind that I made coffee. I'm an early riser, and I didn't want to wake you." "I don't mind at all. How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in years. Your guest room is very comfortable." We're being so polite, so careful with each other, as if we're afraid that too much familiarity might break whatever spell has been cast over us. But when he pours me a cup of coffee and our fingers brush as he hands it to me, the same electric current that ran between us last night sparks again. "What's the plan for today?" I ask, settling at the kitchen table where the yellow roses from last night still perfume the air. "I don't have a plan," he says, sitting across from me. "I thought maybe we could just spend the day together, do whatever feels natural. I don't have to be anywhere until tomorrow morning when I need to pack for my flight." Tomorrow morning, reality intrudes like cold water. He's leaving tomorrow, going back to his life in Portland, and I'm staying here with my life in Michigan. After tomorrow, this becomes something we have to work at instead of something that's simply happening to us. "What are you thinking?" he asks gently. "I'm thinking about tomorrow, about you leaving, about what happens after that. What do you want to happen?" I consider the question seriously. What do I want? "I want to see you again," I say, "soon. Not in another 43 years, but in a few weeks. I want to know what your house looks like, what your routine is, whether you really can hear the ocean from your bedroom. I want to introduce you to my Tuesday painting group and my Thursday book club and Mrs. Patterson, who'll probably faint when she realizes I'm dating someone." "Dating?" he repeats, his eyes twinkling. "Is that what we're doing?" I think so, although I'm not sure what dating looks like when you're our age. "I think it looks exactly like this," he says, gesturing to the two of us sitting at my kitchen table in our morning clothes, sharing coffee and conversation, and the comfortable intimacy of people who've known each other across decades. "Then I think I like dating," I say. "Good, because I was hoping you'd agree to do more of it." We spend the morning walking through my neighborhood, and I see it through his eyes, the tree-lined streets, the well-maintained houses, the sense of community and safety I've taken for granted. We stop at the farmer's market, where several vendors remember me from yesterday and look curiously at my companion. At the bookstore, we browse the shelves together, discovering we still share a love of mysteries and biographies. At the coffee shop, we claim a table by the window and watch the Saturday morning foot traffic while planning our next meeting. "I could come back in 2 weeks," James suggests, "for a long weekend, or you could come to Portland if you're feeling adventurous." I haven't been on a plane in 15 years, I admit. Then maybe it's time. Besides, I have a guest room too, and a whole coastline I'd love to show you. The idea terrifies and thrills me in equal measure. Getting on a plane, traveling across the country, staying in the home of a man I'm just getting to know again, it goes against every careful instinct I've developed over the years. But sitting here with James, watching him gesture excitedly as he describes the tide pools and the lighthouse and the little restaurant where he eats breakfast every Sunday, I find myself saying, yes, I'd like that. I'd like to see your world. Really? Really. But can we start with you coming back here? I think I need to work up to the airplane adventure. Of course. 2 weeks from today? 2 weeks from today. We shake on it like business partners, then laugh at our own formality. I can't believe we're doing this, I say. I can't believe we waited this long to do it. The rest of the day passes in a blur of simple pleasures: lunch at the diner downtown, a walk through the park where we used to meet when we were dating the first time, a stop at the grocery store where I buy ingredients for the dinner I want to cook for our last night together. Our last night, I repeat as we're loading groceries into my car. That sounds so final. It's not final, James says firmly. It's just the end of the beginning. That evening, we cook together for the first time, and I discover that he's learned a few things about food preparation during his years of bachelor living. He's competent with a knife, comfortable at the stove, and he makes me laugh with stories of his early cooking disasters. I once tried to impress a date by making beef stroganoff, he says, stirring the sauce for our pasta while I toss the salad. I didn't realize you were supposed to cook the mushrooms first. She was very polite about the crunchy mushrooms, but I never heard from her again. Poor thing, both of you. Live and learn. Although it took me about 10 more years to really learn. Well, you're very handy in the kitchen now, I observe, watching him work with easy confidence. I had good motivation to improve. After dinner, we settle on the couch again, but this time we don't maintain careful distance. I curl up against his side, my head on his shoulder, his arm around me, and we watch an old movie on television, like the comfortable couple we somehow became in the span of 3 days. "Margaret," he says during a commercial break. Thank you. For what? For taking a chance on us, for not letting fear win, for being brave enough to open your door when I knocked. I lift my head to look at him. Thank you for knocking. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for being patient with a woman who's out of practice at this. We're both out of practice, but I think we're remembering pretty well. I think so too. He kisses the top of my head, and I settle back against his shoulder, marveling at how natural this feels. How right. James? Yes? I'm scared about tomorrow, about you leaving. Me too. But I'm also excited about what comes next. Me too. That's good, right? Being scared and excited at the same time? I think that's exactly what falling in love feels like, no matter how old you are. Falling in love. The words settle over me like a warm blanket. Is that what we're doing? I ask. I think so. Is that okay with you? It's terrifying, I say honestly, and wonderful, and completely unexpected, and probably the best thing that's happened to me in 43 years. Only probably? Definitely, I correct. Definitely the best thing. We go to bed that night in our separate rooms, but not before standing in the hallway for 10 minutes, reluctant to part even for sleep. When he finally kisses me goodnight, it's with a promise. 2 weeks, he says. 2 weeks, I agree. And then we'll figure out the rest as we go. The rest as we go. I lie in my bed listening to him move around in the guest room, getting ready for sleep, and I'm struck by how different my house sounds with another person in it. Not empty anymore, but full of possibility and companionship and the sweet complexity of building a life that includes someone else's needs and preferences and dreams. Tomorrow he'll leave, and I'll go back to my solitary routine. But it won't be the same routine, because now it's temporary. Now it's just the space between visits, the time I spend getting ready for his return. For the first time in 43 years, I'm not living alone by choice. I'm living alone by circumstance, and that changes everything. 2 weeks, I think, as I drift off to sleep. I can handle 2 weeks. The next morning arrives too quickly, bringing with it the reality of departure and the awkwardness of goodbyes that neither of us quite knows how to navigate. James has to check out of his hotel and catch a flight that leaves at 3 o'clock, which means he needs to be at the airport by 1, which means he needs to leave my house by 11:30. We have 4 hours. I make pancakes for breakfast using my mother's recipe that I haven't attempted in years, and they turn out perfectly, golden and fluffy and worthy of our last meal together. James eats 3 of them and declares them the best pancakes of his adult life, which I'm pretty sure is an exaggeration, but I appreciate the sentiment. "I'm going to miss your cooking," he says, helping me clean up the breakfast dishes. "I'm going to miss having someone to cook for." 2 weeks, he reminds me. 2 weeks, I agree, but the phrase is starting to sound less like a promise and more like a prison sentence. At 10 o'clock, he goes upstairs to gather his few belongings from the guest room, and I sit at my kitchen table staring at the yellow roses that are starting to show their age, a few petals scattered on the wood surface like abandoned hopes. When he comes back downstairs with his overnight bag, the reality of his leaving hits me like a physical blow. In a few minutes, he'll walk out my door and drive away, and I'll be alone again with nothing but the memory of these 3 miraculous days to sustain me until his return. If he returns, what if he gets back to Portland and realizes that this was all a mistake? What if the distance and the time apart make him remember all the reasons we didn't work out the first time? What if 2 weeks is too long, and whatever magic we've rediscovered fades in the harsh light of separate everyday lives? "Hey," he says softly, setting down his bag and crossing to where I'm sitting. "What's happening in that head of yours?" "I'm spiraling," I admit. "I'm imagining all the ways this could go wrong." "Such as?" "Such as you getting home and remembering that I'm the woman who left you at the altar. Such as me chickening out and calling you next week to say this was all a lovely fantasy, but I'm not ready for reality. Such as both of us losing our nerve and going back to our safe, solitary lives because it's easier than risking our hearts again." He pulls out the chair next to mine and sits down, taking my hands in both of his. "Margaret, look at me." I raise my eyes to his, seeing my own fears reflected there. "I'm scared too," he says, terrified actually, "but I'm more scared of giving up on this than I am of trying and failing. Aren't you?" I think about it seriously. Am I more afraid of heartbreak or of living the rest of my life wondering what might have been? "Yes," I say finally. "Yes, I'm more scared of giving up." Then we don't give up. We take it one day at a time, one phone call at a time, one visit at a time. And we trust that what we found here is strong enough to survive a little distance. You make it sound simple again. Maybe that's because it is simple. Maybe love is always simple, and we're the ones who complicate it. Love. There's that word again, spoken so casually, as if it's already an established fact between us, rather than something we're still discovering. "James," I say carefully, "are we in love?" "I am," he says without hesitation. "I've been in love with you for 43 years, Margaret. Being here with you these past few days hasn't changed that. It's just reminded me that what I felt was real and worth holding on to. Even after everything? Even after what I did to us? Especially after what you did to us, because now I understand that you did it out of love, not lack of love. You loved me enough to set me free when you thought you couldn't make me happy. Tears blur my vision. And now? Now I think we're both ready to make each other happy, if we're brave enough to try. I look at this man who's offering me a second chance at the great love of my life, and I realize that the only thing scarier than saying yes would be saying no. I love you too, I say quietly. I never stopped loving you, James, not for a single day in 43 years. His smile is radiant, transforming his face into the one I remember from our youth, joy and hope and infinite possibility. Then we're going to be fine, he says. Whatever happens, however we figure this out, we're going to be fine because we love each other. Everything else is just logistics. Logistics. What a wonderfully practical way to think about the enormous life changes we're contemplating. Moving, or at least spending significant time in each other's cities. Blending 2 carefully constructed independent lives into something new and shared. Learning to compromise after decades of having everything our own way. Just logistics, I repeat, testing the phrase. Just logistics, he confirms. Love is the hard part, and we've got that figured out. At 11:20, we're standing by my front door, prolonging the goodbye neither of us wants to face. He's already put his bag in the rental car, but he keeps finding reasons to come back inside. He forgot to give me his flight information. He wants to make sure I have his cell phone number programmed correctly. He needs to check that the coffee maker is turned off. Finally, there are no more excuses. This is it, he says, taking me in his arms right there in my entryway. This is it, I agree, memorizing the feel of his embrace, the scent of his cologne, the sound of his heartbeat against my ear. 2 weeks, he whispers into my hair. 2 weeks, I whisper back. I love you, Margaret. I love you too, James. He pulls back to look at my face, his thumb wiping away a tear I didn't realize had fallen. No crying, he says gently. This isn't goodbye. This is see you soon. See you soon, I repeat, trying to smile. See you soon. He kisses me then, soft and sweet and full of promise, and then he's walking out my door and down my front steps to the rental car. I stand in the doorway and wave as he backs out of my driveway, and he waves back until he turns the corner and disappears from view. Then I close the door and lean against it, listening to the sudden silence of my house. It feels different now, not empty the way it felt before he came, lonely and resigned and carefully maintained, empty like a theater after a wonderful performance, holding the echo of something beautiful that just happened and the anticipation of something beautiful that will happen again. I walk through my rooms, seeing the evidence of his visit everywhere. The coffee cup he used this morning, washed and sitting in the dish drainer, the pillow on the guest room bed still bearing the impression of his head. The yellow roses on my kitchen table, a few more petals fallen, but still beautiful, still fragrant, still proof that something extraordinary happened here. In the living room, I notice he's left something on the coffee table, a small piece of paper folded in half with my name written on the outside in his careful handwriting. I open it with trembling fingers. Margaret, it says, thank you for the 3 most wonderful days of my life. Thank you for taking a chance on us, for opening your heart and your home, for being exactly the woman I hoped you'd become. I'm already counting the days until I see you again. All my love, James. P.S. The ring is yours, whether you choose to wear it or not. Like my heart, it belongs to you. I look over at the kitchen table where the small velvet box still sits beside the U, I say, busying myself with making fresh coffee because I need something to do with my hands, some normal activity to anchor me to reality. How do you take yours? Do you still... Black, 2 sugars, he finishes and smiles. Some things don't change. But everything else does, I think, as I measure coffee grounds with shaking hands. Everything else changes so completely that 43 years can pass like a dream, like a story you heard once and half remembered. He sits at my kitchen table, placing the roses gently beside my forgotten dinner plate, and suddenly we're not 68 and 70 anymore. We're young again, sitting in his mother's kitchen or mine, planning a future that seemed so certain, so inevitable, that we never bothered to imagine it might not happen. Margaret, he says quietly, and there's something in his voice that makes me turn from the coffee maker to look at him. I need you to know something. Here it comes, I think, the anger, the hurt, the 43 years of questions I've been dreading since the moment I saw him on my porch. Why did you leave me? Why did you disappear? Why did you throw away what we had? But when he speaks, his words are nothing like what I expected. I need you to know that leaving me was the right thing to do. My hands go still on the coffee maker. The kitchen falls silent, except for the tick of the clock above the stove and the distant hum of the refrigerator. Outside, a car drives by, its headlights briefly illuminating the window before disappearing into the gathering darkness. "What?" I whisper. He leans forward, his hands clasped together on the table, his eyes serious and kind. "I was a mess back then, Margaret. I thought I was ready to be a husband, but I wasn't. I was selfish and immature, and I had no idea what it meant to build a life with someone else. You saw that before I did. You saved us both from what would have been a disaster." The coffee maker beeps, signaling that the brew is ready, but I can't move. I stare at this man who was once going to be my husband. This man who's telling me that the decision that haunted me for 43 years was the right one. "That's not true," I say finally. "I was scared. I was a coward. I ran because I didn't know how to stay." "Maybe," he says, "but you were also wise. Wiser than either of us realized at the time." I pour coffee into 2 mugs, the good china ones, with the rose pattern that I never use because they seem too fancy for every day. But nothing about this evening qualifies as every day. My hands are steadier now, as if his words have given me something solid to hold on to. "Tell me about your life, James," I say, as I set his coffee in front of him. "What happened after you left? Did you ever marry?" He wraps his hands around the mug, steam rising between us like incense. "Once. Her name was Linda. It lasted 8 years. I'm sorry." "Don't be. We were good friends who thought we were in love. When we finally admitted we weren't, the divorce was almost a relief." He takes a sip of coffee and nods approvingly. "You still make the best coffee in town." "It's the same brand I've always bought," I say, sitting across from him at the table where I've eaten thousands of solitary meals. Some things don't change. "And some things change completely." His eyes meet mine across the table. "You never married." It's not a question. Somehow he knows, just as I somehow knew the moment I saw him that he'd come here looking for me specifically, not just wandering through his past. "No," I say simply, "I never did." "Why?" The question hangs between us like a bridge I'm not sure I'm ready to cross. Why didn't I marry? Because no one ever measured up to the memory of what we had? Because I was afraid of making another mistake? Because I convinced myself that I was better off alone than risking another moment like the one when I stood in my wedding dress and realized I couldn't go through with it? "I don't know," I say, which is both true and not true. I guess I never found the right person. He nods slowly, as if he understands all the things I'm not saying. "I brought you something else," he says suddenly, reaching into his jacket pocket, "besides the flowers." He pulls out a small velvet box, faded and worn, and places it gently on the table between us. I recognize it immediately, the ring box that I handed back to him through his best man 43 years ago, along with a brief note that said simply, "I'm sorry, I can't. Please don't try to find me." My breath catches in my throat. "You kept it," I whisper. "I kept it," he confirms. "I don't know why. Linda used to ask me about it, and I could never explain. I should have thrown it away, or returned it to the jeweler, or given it to someone else. But I couldn't." I stare at the box as if it might disappear if I look away. Inside is the engagement ring he gave me on a rainy Thursday evening in April when we were walking through Riverside Park, and he suddenly dropped to one knee right there on the muddy path. A simple solitaire, nothing fancy, but it was perfect because it was ours. "James, I can't," I start. "I'm not asking you to wear it," he says quickly. "I'm not asking you for anything, Margaret. I just wanted you to have it back. It belongs to you, whether you want it or not." "Why?" The word comes out smaller than I intended. "Why now? Why after all this time?" He's quiet for a long moment, his fingers turning the coffee mug in slow circles on the table. When he finally speaks, his voice is barely above a whisper. "Because my mother asked me to bring it to you." The words hit me like cold water. Mrs. Morrison. Even in her final days, when dementia had stolen most of her memories, she was still thinking about us, still believing somehow in a love story that never had an ending. "She made me promise," he continues. "The last coherent conversation we had, she grabbed my hand and said, 'James, you give that ring back to Margaret. She's been waiting long enough.' I tried to tell her that you probably didn't want it, that you'd moved on, but she just squeezed my hand harder and said, 'She's been waiting, James. Don't make her wait anymore.'" Tears blur my vision. I reach for a napkin from the holder in the center of the table, one of those practical paper napkins I buy in bulk, because who needs cloth napkins when you're eating alone? But tonight, wiping tears caused by a conversation about love that lasted 43 years, paper feels inadequate. "She was wrong," I say, my voice thick with unshed tears. "I wasn't waiting. I was hiding." "Were you?" He leans forward, his eyes intense. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been preparing." "Preparing for what?" "For this moment, for me to come back. Look around, Margaret." He gestures to my kitchen, my home, my carefully maintained life. "You never married, never changed your name. You kept the same phone number. I looked you up in the directory. You're still Margaret Chin, still living like you're expecting someone to come home." The truth of his words settles over me like a blanket I didn't know I was cold without. Have I been waiting? All these years of saying no to good men, of keeping my independence, of maintaining a life that had room for one more person, was I unconsciously leaving space for him? I thought about you, I admit, more than I should have. I wondered if you were happy, if you found someone who could love you the way you deserve to be loved. And I thought about you every day for the first 10 years, and then every week for the next 10, and then every month after that. Even married to Linda, even when I convinced myself I was content, there was always this question mark in the back of my mind. What if? What would have happened if you'd said yes that morning? What if? The two most dangerous words in the English language, especially when you're 68 years old and looking across your kitchen table at the road not taken. We were different people then, I say, trying to be practical, trying to ignore the way my heart is beating faster just from having him near. We might not even like each other now. He laughs, a sound I'd forgotten I missed. "Margaret, you just invited a man you haven't seen in 43 years into your home and made him coffee. You're wearing a cardigan that matches your eyes, and you've got herbs growing in your kitchen window and books stacked everywhere I look. You're exactly who I thought you'd become, just more so." "And you," I ask, "are you who you thought you'd become?" He considers this seriously, as if I've asked him to solve a complex equation. "I'm lonelier than I expected," he says finally. "More grateful for small kindnesses. Less certain about everything except the things that really matter." He pauses, then adds, "I retired last year from the insurance company in Portland. Spent 42 years writing policies for other people's lives, helping them prepare for disasters and losses and unexpected changes. Ironic, considering I never saw this coming." "What? Your mother's death?" "No, this. You. Sitting in your kitchen feeling like no time has passed at all." I know exactly what he means. Despite the gray hair and the reading glasses and the prescription bottles lined up by my sink, despite the 43 years that separate this moment from our last conversation, there's something timeless happening here. Something that feels like coming home. "I don't know what to do with this, James," I admit. "I don't know how to be the person who gets a second chance." "Neither do I," he says. "But maybe that's okay. Maybe we don't have to know. Maybe we can figure it out together. Together? When was the last time I did anything together with someone? When was the last time "we" was part of my vocabulary? I reach across the table and touch the ring box with one finger, half expecting it to disappear like something from a dream. But it's real, solid, warm from his pocket. What would your mother think, I ask, if she knew we were sitting here talking like this? She'd probably say it was about time, he says with a smile. She never stopped believing we belonged together. Used to drive me crazy when I was married to Linda, the way she'd mention your name in every conversation. Margaret Chen always loved those yellow roses. Margaret Chen knew how to make a proper pot roast. I wonder if Margaret Chen is taking care of herself. Linda finally banned me from visiting during the holidays because she couldn't stand hearing about you. I'm sorry, that must have been difficult. It was, but it was also true. Mom was right about everything, as usual. He reaches across the table and covers my hand with his. His skin is warm and dry, marked with age spots that weren't there when we were young, but his touch still makes my pulse quicken. Margaret, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. I nod, not trusting my voice. If I hadn't left town after the wedding, if I'd stayed and tried to win you back, would you have let me? The question I've been asking myself for 43 years, finally spoken aloud. I don't know, I say truthfully. I was so ashamed of what I'd done, so convinced I'd proven that I wasn't capable of the kind of love you deserved. I probably would have kept running. But now I'm too old, I say, and he laughs. We're not old, Margaret. We're just experienced. Experienced. What a lovely way to think about 68 years of living, of making mistakes and learning from them, of building a life that's sturdy enough to withstand unexpected visitors, bearing flowers and second chances. Stay for dinner, I say impulsively. I was just going to heat up some leftover soup, but I could make something proper. I remember you used to like my chicken parmesan. You remember that? I remember everything, James. That's been my problem. He squeezes my hand gently. Mine too, he says, but maybe tonight we can start making new memories to go alongside the old ones. I look at this man sitting at my kitchen table, this ghost from my past who turned out to be flesh and blood and possibilities I'd given up imagining. The roses he brought are filling my kitchen with their sweet scent, and the ring box sits between us like a question that doesn't need to be answered tonight or tomorrow or maybe ever. But the fact that it's here, that we're here, that 43 years of separation somehow led to this moment of reconnection, maybe that's enough for now. Chicken parmesan it is, I say, standing up to check what I have in the refrigerator. But I should warn you, I'm out of practice cooking for two. We have time to remember, he says, and something in his voice makes me turn back to look at him. He's watching me with an expression I recognize from all those years ago, tender and hopeful and a little bit amazed, as if he can't quite believe his luck. Maybe we both need to learn how to believe in luck again. Maybe that's what second chances are for. By the time we sit down to eat, the sun has completely set, and my kitchen feels like the coziest place on earth. I've lit the candles I save for special occasions, because what could be more special than this? And James has arranged his white roses in a vase that belonged to my grandmother, the crystal one I never use because it seemed too fragile for everyday flowers. This is incredible, he says after his first bite of chicken. You haven't lost your touch. I've had 43 years to perfect it, I reply, surprised by how natural it feels to joke with him. You're probably the beneficiary of decades of trial and error. Lucky me. We eat slowly, savoring both the food and the conversation that flows as easily as wine. He tells me about his work in Portland, the small house he bought near the coast where he can hear the ocean from his bedroom window. I tell him about my job at the library, which I retired from 5 years ago, and my volunteer work at the community center, where I teach watercolor painting to anyone brave enough to try. Watercolor, he says thoughtfully. You always said you wanted to learn to paint. It took me until I was 50 to finally take that first class. Better late than never, I suppose. Show me, he says suddenly. Do you have any of your paintings here? I feel a flush of embarrassment. My watercolors are amateur efforts, the kind of thing you hang on your own walls because they make you happy, not because they're particularly good. They're just for fun, I protest. Margaret. The way he says my name stops my objections. Please, I'd love to see what you've created. So after dinner, I lead him to my living room where 3 of my paintings hang on the wall opposite the couch. A seascape that reminds me of the Maine coast we never saw together, a garden scene inspired by the community center's rose beds, and a portrait of a lighthouse standing sentinel against a stormy sky. He studies them seriously, his hands clasped behind his back like he's in a museum. These are beautiful, he says finally, and I can tell he means it. You have a real gift, Margaret. The way you've captured the light in this one. He points to the lighthouse painting. It's extraordinary. Thank you. I'm pleased, despite myself. Art class has been good for me. It's nice to create something, even if it's not perfect. Nothing important is ever perfect, he says, turning away from the paintings to look at me. If it were, it wouldn't be real. We settle on the couch with coffee and the last pieces of the apple pie I bought at the grocery store yesterday, both of us careful to leave space between us on the cushions. But as the evening deepens and our conversation ranges from shared memories to separate experiences to tentative discussions of what might come next, I find myself acutely aware of that space, not as a barrier, but as a possibility. I should probably go soon, James says when the grandfather clock in the hallway chimes 10 o'clock. I don't want to wear out my welcome on the first night. First night? As if there might be others. Where are you staying? I ask. The Holiday Inn out by the interstate. Not exactly luxury, but it's clean. I think about him driving back to that sterile hotel room, eating continental breakfast alone in the morning, checking out and disappearing from my life again. The thought makes my chest tight with something that might be panic. How long are you in town? I ask, trying to sound casual. I fly back to Portland on Sunday. 3 more days. 3 days. 72 hours to figure out what this is, what it could be, what we want it to be. James, I say, then stop. What am I about to suggest? What am I ready for? Yes? Would you like to have dinner again tomorrow night? I could make something special. It's been so long since I've had reason to really cook. His smile is like sunrise. I'd like that very much, he says. What time? 6:30? It's a date. The word hangs between us, both familiar and strange. When was the last time I had a date? When was the last time anyone called sharing a meal with me by that name? I walk him to the door, suddenly nervous again. What's the protocol here? Do we hug goodbye, shake hands, kiss cheek? We're not the young couple we used to be, but we're not exactly strangers either. He solves the dilemma by taking my hands in both of his. Thank you, Margaret, he says quietly, for letting me in tonight, for listening, for being exactly who I hoped you'd be. Thank you for the flowers, and for the ring, and for coming back. I should have come back years ago. Maybe we weren't ready years ago. Maybe this is exactly when we were supposed to find each other again. He lifts our joined hands and kisses my knuckles gently, a gesture so familiar it takes my breath away. Until tomorrow, he says. Until tomorrow. I watch from my front window as he walks to his rental car, as he pauses to look back at my house before getting in, as his headlights sweep across my front yard and disappear around the corner. Then I lean against my front door and let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. The house feels different now, not empty, but expectant, as if it too is waiting to see what tomorrow might bring. I gather up our coffee cups and dessert plates, washing each one carefully and putting them away in their proper places, but I leave the roses on the kitchen table and the ring box beside them, proof that this evening actually happened.